But let's get into this, guys. We've ranked almost every room in the SEC. After this one, only the secondary, and then we're going to be actually making predictions how I think these teams are going to finish. I'm going to have a list of basically how I broke these teams down, added up points-wise, and that's how I'm going to rank them. And then I'm going to have my just ranking how I think they're going to finish overall and see how they compare. That's how we did with the Big 12 last year. I really like that. And honestly, without even looking, they were pretty similar. So let's see if they're similar in the SEC. First up, guys, let me take a drink, and then we'll get to number one, which is the Georgia Bulldogs. Anyone shocked by this? Because I am not. I will say, this was closer than I thought it was going to be. You have Small Munden. By the way, cool name. I think his nickname's Smile, or am I making that up? But his name's Small Munden, coming back for a senior year. He had 68 tackles and 3 sacks last year. I think he has unfinished business. That's why I think he's back, because this guy was good enough to go to the NFL last year. He really was. I don't think he was a first-round pick, but he probably is a late second, early third-round pick, in my opinion, just watching him. You also have Jerron Walker, led team in sacks. And then you have sophomore C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, Troy Bowles, and all these guys are 4- or 5-star recruits. It's crazy how deep Georgia is. Like, if Small Munden and Jelon Walker got hurt, they could still be an average SEC room linebacker-wise, which is crazy. C.J. Allen actually came on last year, and it's a reason for one of the guys that we'll talk about in the next room for transferring. But he had 41 tackles in just 4 starts last year. He played in all 14 games, but he had 41 tackles in those 14 games and 4 starts. And I think this guy could have an all SEC type year, and that is C.J. Allen. And that rounds out the first room in the SEC. Number 2, and this is the guy that transferred because of that. Pop Dumas Johnson is a senior as well. He has 126 tackles, 17 tackles for loss in his career. Hell of a player. Guys, if this guy was still on Georgia, imagine Small Munden, C.J. Allen, and Pop Dumas Johnson rotating on the inside. That is insane to have that much talent. And guess what? Georgia still has crazy amounts of talent without him. But this really helps out Kentucky's room. They also have De'Eric Jackson, 3-year starter, 178 tackles in 3 years, 12 tackles for loss, 6 pass breakups, and 4 interceptions for him. And then they have Alex Afari. He's mostly playing Sam linebacker, like we said. He's going to play on the side with the most personnel on it. And it's because he's a big dude. He's 6'4", big thumper at linebacker. I think he's in for a really good year. I mean, those top 2 alone are fantastic players who are going to play in the NFL. Pop Dumas Johnson is probably going to play in the NFL for a very long time. Next up, this will make the rival happy, guys. I'm not trying to make them happy. They have a good linebacker in the room. They really do. Oklahoma, Danny Stutzman, 100 tackles for him the past 2 years. He was also second in sacks. Now, he only had 4 sacks. I think Ethan Downs was first with 5.5, so not that impressive. And I tried to argue with an Oklahoma fan about the defensive line. It's not that good, not as good as you think it is. I should say this. It's not that good on the edges. It's very good in the middle. But, again, go and look up at the defensive line room rankings that I put out already on the SEC channel and on here. Kip Lewis came in, and he's still there. Second last season in tackles with 66. And they have the 4th leading tackler back as well, and Jared Kanik with 62 total tackles, and he was 3rd in sacks. They also bring back Kobe McKenzie, young guy. Only played a little bit last year. I think he only had 12 tackles, so really not that great from him. But the top, your top 4 tacklers, or 3 out of 4, were your linebackers and Kip Lewis, Jared Kanik, and Danny Stutzman, and you bring them all back. That is why Oklahoma is ranked number 3 for the linebacker rooms. Very good room for them. Number 4, and I think after this room, it kind of takes a step back, honestly, is Alabama. Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell, both respectively 2nd in tackles and 3rd in tackles. Deontay Lawson was 67. Jahad Campbell was 66. Deontay Lawson also had 3 sacks. That was only in 11 games. He missed a couple of games last year. Jahad Campbell had 1 interception and 2 fumble recoveries as well. Those 2 guys, you could argue they might be the best duo at the interior linebacker position. The outside is questionable with Justin Jefferson and Jeremiah Alexander, but they have a couple of good freshmen they can rotate there as well. So that's going to be interesting, guys. But I have them at number 4. And number 5, going to be shocked by this. You really are. Vanderbilt at number 5. And I was surprised by this as well, but they're pretty good. Langston Patterson, 74 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, both first on the team last year, and he's back. And this is a guy right here. Listen, you don't have to like Vandy. You don't even have to respect Vandy. This guy's a player. This is a guy that a lot of people were hoping would jump in the portal so they could poach him. Apparently, he was made a lot of offers from certain teams. C.J. Taylor, linebacker safety hybrid. We call that the joker position in some defenses. 55 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, an all SEC type player. Expect a big season from him. He's only I think he's only a sophomore this season, either only a sophomore or junior. This guy's a hell of a player. He's going to play in the NFL. I expect him to have a big year in this Vandy defense, and I think I have him rated properly. They also bring back talented sophomore and Brian Longwell, freshman. He was 9th on the team in tackles last year as a freshman. He's a sophomore this year. And they bring in Prince Coley, former 4-star from Notre Dame, for the 5th-ranked linebacker room in the SEC, the Vanderbilt Commodores. Number 6 is where I bring in my Longhorns. Not the deepest room, but again, we just talked about this man. Anthony Hill, 2nd in tackles with 67, 2nd in sacks with 5, 4th in tackles for loss, all in under 50% of snaps played. There's a good chance this might be the best linebacker in this whole. Out of all the guys I've listed, this might be the best linebacker. Might be at the end of the year. David Bend also had a really nice year last year. Was 4th on the team in tackles with 50, 3.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. And then you have Mo Blackwell, who's kind of like your chess piece back there. He's going to cover your tight ends, your running backs out of the backfield. A slimmer guy who keeps getting nicked up. That does worry me. But you also have Leona Lufau, who was a high 4-star recruit last year. Sat out most of his freshman year, played a little bit of special teams. He's going to play special teams this year. I think he will be rotated in at the linebacker room as well. But that brings in Texas at number 6. I think you could debate 6 and 7, honestly. And I have 7 LSU. If they can actually put Harold Perkins in the proper spot, honestly, I think they should play him a lot like Anthony Hill. You'll play a little bit on the edge. You'll play a little bit at middle linebacker. That's why I think Harold Perkins should be utilized. He was 4th in tackles last year, 1st in tackles for loss, and 1st in sacks. Guy is a hell of a football player. This is probably his last year in college football. They also bring back Greg Penn III. He was 2nd in tackles with 89 and 4 sacks, which was 3rd on the team. And then they also bring back the brothers West and Whit Weeks. Whit is actually the younger one, and he's the better one, honestly. So those are the 4 guys that you'll keep an eye out on in the LSU room. Next up, we have A&M, and they lost Edrin Cooper at the linebacker position, but they do bring back Torian York, who was 2nd in tackles, 74 tackles for him, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. They bring in Damian Sanford in his sophomore year. He was a freshman last year, only had 4 tackles last year, so he's going to have to take a big jump for this room. And they bring in Scooby Williams from Florida. He has 70 tackles in 3 seasons there, so an okay player, not a great player. And then Solomon DeShields is a Pitt transfer, 58 tackles and 8 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks last year at Pitt. So pretty good player, but again, he's coming from a 3-9 Pitt team who was, I think they were pretty good on defense. They weren't great, so we'll see how that works out for them there. Number 9, we have South Carolina guys, and they lose quite a bit. They bring in Pitt transfer Bangley Kamara, 120 career tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. They also bring it back Debo Williams, 113 tackles last year, so he had a fantastic year. I think he'll have another good year. They bring in Demetrius Knight from Charlotte, 147 tackles in 5 years, so nothing to write home about, honestly. And then they bring in Bam Morton Scott, or they bring him back, 38 tackles last year for him. So honestly, other than Debo Williams and Bangley Kamara from Pitt, not a great room. I think it's okay. That's why I have him ranked number 9. Number 10, I have the Auburn Tigers, if it'll pull up here. Eugene Asante comes in, or his first season with Auburn was last year, 86 tackles, 5 sacks. Or sorry, that wasn't him. Eugene Asante was with Auburn last year, 86 tackles and 5 sacks. They bring in Austin Keys, whose first season was with Auburn last year, originally from Ole Miss, 30 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. And then they bring in first-year player from Duke, now at Auburn, Dorian Masusi, 44 games, 143 tackles, 2 years started. So a decent player there on what was a really good Duke defense. Now, did that have to do with more with Mike Elko, or was it actually, or is he actually a good player? We'll have to see with Auburn. Number 11, I bring in Ole Miss. they would be higher, but they have one great player, and they have really nothing after him. They bring in transfer Chris Paul Jr. from Arkansas. He is a really, really good player. Led Arkansas in tackles last year. They also have Kari Coleman and Centauri Perkins and TJ Bradley there, but not much to write home about between those three. It's mostly Chris Paul there, and that's why I have them ranked 11. If those guys were really good players, they would honestly be a lot higher. Hell, if one of them was a really good player, I probably would have him ranked somewhere where Texas is at. But you're relying on Chris Paul. If he gets hurt, it could get dicey there for Ole Miss. Number 12, we have Florida. You could probably debate this being a little bit higher, but they're just really young. They're very talented, though. Other than this guy does have talent, and he has experience. Shamar James, and 8 sacks last year, and their defense fell off a cliff when this guy got hurt. In 8 games, 54 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. They also bring in South Carolina transfer Grayson Howard. He only had 19 tackles last year, though. And then look out for freshmen Miles Graham and Aaron Childs. Again, talented, but inexperienced, so we'll see how that pans out for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. Number 13, Tennessee. Big question marks here. 7th-year player Keenan Pillai from BYU. He missed all of last year with an injury, and then you're counting on Arian Carter, who's a talented pass rusher and a freshman, and then, or I don't know if he's freshman, sorry. Arian Carter, talented pass rusher, and then Jeremiah Tillander, also at the linebacker's position. So it's going to be very questionable here. I mean, your best player is a 7th-year guy who has injury issues. So that is why I have Tennessee 13. Number 14, Missouri. They lose both their linebackers starters last year, but they do have Chuck Hicks and Tristan Newton, who played in the bowl game versus Ohio State and played pretty well. They have 11 years of college experience combined between the two, which is hilarious. And then, but they've never been regular season starters, so that's the question mark here. And then they have South Alabama transfer Khalil Jacobs and Miami transfer Corey Flagg. Just a whole lot of question marks here for number 14, Missouri. If those two guys do play as well as they did play in the Ohio State game, though, for the whole season, this can jump up probably to number 9 or 10. Mississippi State, all SEC linebackers Nathaniel Watson and Jet Johnson are gone. Bye-bye, see ya. This team is not good at most positions, and they aren't good here. John Lewis and J.P. Purvis have to step up. Those are the two main guys there. And then Tide Cooper at outside linebacker, no starting experience for him, but he's a big guy, 6'4". Let's see if he can get to the pass, or if he can be a good pass rusher. And then, guys, number 16 is Archie. They lost 30 players to the transfer portal, and they lost the 4 main linebackers they were going to use, including Chris Paul, who went to Ole Miss. Brad Spence was a freshman last year. He's played in 11 games. He is penciled in as a starter there. We'll see how he does. They also bring in transfers Larry Worth from Jackson State and Steven Dix Jr. from Marshall, and former 5-star Xavier Sori from Georgia. We'll see how those guys play. They're kind of unproven. And if they are proven, they're coming from lower-level schools. My God, the bottom half of this is really questionable at best. It's going to be very iffy for Arkansas, Mississippi State, and even Missouri and Tennessee. Honestly, I'm only confident. I think it falls off after 12 from Florida, because at least you have one guy there I'm confident in. 13 through 16, I have no players in. One player in I'm confident in. Someone's going to have to step up tremendously for those rooms. And that is my linebacker rankings for the SEC. Next week, we will do secondary, and then it's prediction time, fellas. I cannot wait